During its 1996 release, the N64 took the world by storm. Many publications called it a technical wonder, and even the world's most powerful game machine. It introduced so many people to the world of 3D gaming, with its cutting-edge 64-bit processor, analog control for full 3D movement, and hundreds of groundbreaking titles that we would have never even imagined possible just a few years prior. Going back to it now though, yeah, like anything that's old, it can be pretty rough to revisit nowadays. However, I think this is especially true for the N64. There were no rules, no standards, nothing like that yet for 3D games. I mean, what the fuck? They were just kind of winging it back then, and because of that, a lot of these games haven't aged the best. But that's where remakes come to save the day. Take an old ass game and make it so it's not old or ass. You know, give these games some standards. So let's take a look at a few N64 remakes and see how they stack up to their more primitive counterparts.
The Resistance needed a hero. What they got was a fearless, courageous, unrelenting warrior. I'm back.
Announced at E3 2003, Conker Live and Uncut was set to be a full-on remake of the N64 classic Conker's Bad Fur Day, with fully updated visuals, music, and arguably one of the biggest selling points, a completely uncensored and uncut script. You see, the original game had a lot of words I'd only use in church. But since it was on that kiddie Nintendo console, they had to censor quite a bit of it. But now we're on the grown-up balls to the fucking wall Xbox, baby! You hear that shit? I just said fucking there ain't nothing they can do to fucking stop me!
Yeah, we can't sell that.
Damn it. So yeah, possibly due to retailers refusing to sell the game, the whole completely uncut and uncensored script was out, and the game was rebranded as Conker Live and Reloaded, now with even more censoring than the original.
You stupid little...
But with the original being such a late-era N64 game, it's actually held up incredibly well. Like, if I had a list of N64 games that I thought didn't need a remake, well, this would definitely be one of them. In fact, apparently Live and Reloaded was originally going to be just a straight port. Even they thought it didn't need a remake. Developer Rare had absolutely mastered the N64 hardware at this point. And with this being one of the few games released on the biggest N64 cartridge available at the time, they were able to cram a ton in here, like full voice acting, a pretty big deal back then. So how is Live and Reloaded as a remake? What the fuck is this? So this isn't just a Conker's Bad Fur Day remake. Live and Reloaded is kind of two games in one. Emphasis on kind of. Every time you boot up Live and Reloaded, it starts you on the Xbox Live and Co option on the menu, which is the multiplayer. It's not even the same multiplayer from the N64 version either. It's completely original, with its own game modes and even a story, surprisingly. You have to scroll over a bit to get to the Bad Fur Day stuff, and actually, if you look at, well, anything related to this game, like the box art, disc, manual, promotional art, trailers, it all features stuff from this multiplayer mode. Rarely ever do you see anything even mention that this is a Bad Fur Day remake. It's almost like they were ashamed of it. Or maybe this multiplayer really is that good. It's not. It's just a bog standard multiplayer third-person shooter. Nothing about it even feels remotely Conker related either. Besides the fact that you play as squirrels, I guess. I mean, this is probably fine if you're into these types of games, and playing something like this online was pretty novel in 2005. But still, why make this such a huge focus of your Conker's Bad Fur Day remake? Fucking gamers, that's why. Basically, Rare had just been sold to Microsoft, and very quickly Rare found out that the Xbox crowd was pretty different from the family-friendly Nintendo audience they were used to. Xbox was seen as the more mature and edgy console. It was the place insecure Nintendo fans went to pretend they weren't into this kind of stuff anymore. So all the marketing and content for Live and Reloaded was made with this new, more mature audience in mind. However, considering we haven't seen much of Conker since this game, I'm going to assume this new direction didn't really work out how they had hoped. But let's finally get into the actual Bad Fur Day remake part of this package. So, how is it? I don't know, like, it's super impressive looking, especially for an OG Xbox title. The textures have been completely redone, the fur effects on characters look amazing, and the remastered soundtrack is pretty good too. Visually, this could honestly pass for an early Xbox 360 title. Like, it really looks that good. But with that said, the charm of the game has been completely lost in my opinion. The whole joke of Conker's Bad Fur Day was in its visuals. On the surface, it looked like just another family-friendly Rare game. Seeing a game that resembles something like Banjo-Kazooie spout lines like this,
But it's always my turn to kick their asses. Frank, just get over there and kick his ass, Frank, for sake.
is just fucking funny! Conker's visual identity is a huge part of its appeal. Whereas with the remake, the visuals were very obviously made with the gritty multiplayer mode in mind first. This makes what's supposed to resemble a kid's game or a cartoon look dull and a bit lifeless in some areas. It just completely changes the overall tone of the game. Like seeing a giant pile of shit sing opera at a cute red squirrel just doesn't hit the same here, especially with all the additional censoring.
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I am going to throw my at you.
Me, Mario.
Super Mario 64 is the best launch title of all time. Shut up. It was the perfect introduction to this new dimension of gaming. It taught us how cameras will work, how 3D movement will work, how just everything will work in games from that point on. It completely revolutionized the gaming industry and at the same time effortlessly eased us into this new frontier of 3D gaming with some extremely thoughtful game design. So how the fuck you gonna top that? Alright, yeah, just do it again or whatever, I don't fucking care. What started out as a simple multiplayer tech demo for the then upcoming Nintendo DS eventually became Super Mario 64 DS. A launch title for the DS which ended up being way more than just a bog standard remake. Nintendo went above and beyond to almost make this feel like a complete reimagining of the original. New levels, characters, modes, power-ups. Now this is how you remake a game. Right away, it completely blindsides you by starting you out with... Now, I could see a lot of people at the time being put off by this. I mean, the big man was right there, and you're gonna force me to play as Dingo the fucking dragon? I don't fucking think so. Honestly though, I love that it starts like this. it immediately sets your expectations on what kind of remake this is going to be. Like on the surface, it's just Super Mario 64. But the precedent it sets right off the bat is that this game will not hesitate for even a second to subvert your expectations at any opportunity it can. Start the game expecting Mario? Nope, you're fucking dingo. Jump into a level expecting 1 star, but instead you get a completely new one. Or go in expecting the castle slide level, but instead you get a whole new area of the castle, complete with 2 brand new levels and the Mario! Like I said before, this is how you do a remake. Update the game for more modern audiences, but at the same time, throw in some new stuff for fans of the original. All of this new stuff is really solid too. Each of the playable characters has unique abilities that feel perfectly retrofitted for Mario 64's levels. The new stages and stars, while simplistic, offer some really nice challenges. And there's new mini-games that show off the DS's unique features. Fucking love me some Sword Explode. This is without a doubt the best version of Super Mario 64. Well, it would be if it weren't for the bit at the end. This game is severely held back by being shackled to the DS. It's just straight up awful to control. The DS only has a D-pad, which severely limits the amount of directions you can travel in a 3D space. It's just extremely imprecise to control, which if you played Super Mario 64, you know there is some precise-ass platforming in here. Now, they tried to get around this by giving you full 3D movement using the touchscreen, but I mean, like, come on. There's a reason kids ain't playing fucking Fortnite like this. The controls really are just that bad and ruin what could have otherwise been the superior way to experience this game, which makes it really hard to definitively say which is the better experience. Less content but better controls, or more content with awful controls. What's with this monkey paw shit? Why does it have to be like this? Well, it doesn't have to be. In 2016, Nintendo released Super Mario 64 DS on the Wii U Virtual Console, which allowed us to finally play this game with a proper analog stick, and oh my god, they did it! It's so much better! Like, yeah, you can still tell you're limited to only 8 directions, but it just feels way more natural to play. Even playing on the 3DS with its little circle nub thing doesn't compare. You just can't beat playing with a proper controller. Well, mostly proper. Super Mario 64 DS on the Wii U Virtual Console proves that there's no reason to keep this game tied to the DS. You don't need a touchscreen or other DS gimmicks to enjoy this game. I mean, I'd gladly give up Sword Explode for a proper console port. So, come on, Nintendo. Just fucking do it already, you little bitch. Y'all never gonna believe what we got here. Yeah, it's Star Fox in 3D, alright. It's honestly just a pretty faithful port of the N64 version. Just with improved graphics, god-awful optional gyro controls, and a new 3DS mode, which I swear changes nothing. Honestly, not a bad way to experience the game. Original's still better though. Gotta have that Rumble Pack, baby. God, this game's just pleasant! There are tons of amazing games on the N64, but if I had to pick one that perfectly encompasses everything great about the system, it would have to be this game. It just has everything you'd want in an N64 game. Bright and fun visuals that were super impressive for the time, a fun and challenging single player, and most importantly, some really solid multiplayer. Diddy Kong Racing is just peak N64 in my opinion. You just can't have one without the other. What did I just fucking say? So, Nintendo consoles. They got gimmicks. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Kinda like scurvy, I think. Now, hardware gimmicks are never bad necessarily because, well, they're optional, and when put in the right hands can really enhance a game. But I swear to Christ, Nintendo gives out some kind of fucking tax write-off if you include every gimmick, and Diddy Kong Racing DS is one of the worst offenders of this. Listen, buddy, Rare, we already figured out kart racers like a decade ago. Enough of this cute shit. Rare made damn sure to shoehorn every last one of the DS's features into this game. Press a button to start a race. Fuck that! We got a touchscreen and microphone now, baby. Silver coin challenge? More like touchscreen challenge, bitch. Hey, y'all like egg game? I like touchscreens. None of these new DS exclusive editions enhance or are even remotely better than what they replace from the original. In almost every instance, they just straight up make the game worse, which really does suck because this could have very easily been another Mario 64 DS situation, with it potentially being the superior way to experience the game. Like, there's some genuinely good stuff here. Like difficulty tweaks, vehicle customization, new characters, new courses, online multiplayer, really solid stuff. But they just had to go and ruin it with all of these shoehorned in gimmicks. Diddy Kong Racing DS is one of the worst examples of a video game remake. Instead of changing things for the sake of actually improving the game, they changed things for the sake of getting that sweet, sweet Nintendo tax write-off. Yeah, new Call of Duty's looking pretty good. Remakes are never easy. I think this video has been proof enough of that. It's this hopeless balancing act of keeping the heart and soul of the original work intact while also updating it for modern audiences. However, with some games, especially older titles, it becomes almost impossible to keep those sides balanced, and you're forced to favor one side of the spectrum over the other. Whether it's outdated mechanics not meshing well with modern standards or cryptic game design, as a developer, you're forced to make decisions on these kinds of issues that will no doubt piss somebody off. Like, is it better to stay as true to the original as possible, or smooth out those rough edges to make your game more approachable to newer players? It's hard to say. But few other remakes illustrate this dichotomy better than the N64 Zelda remakes. Alright, so first, Ocarina of Time 3D. What's not to love? I mean, it's a remake of one of the most renowned classics of all time, and is arguably the superior way to experience it. Better graphics, better frame rate, better inventory system, improved dungeons, fucking gyro aiming? Let's fucking get first fucking try, baby. So, sounds pretty great, right? Well, that's what I hear anyways. I have never been able to finish this fucking thing. I didn't grow up with an N64, so honestly, I find Ocarina of Time difficult to go back to nowadays with how dated and empty it can feel. I just don't see it as this timeless classic that everyone else seems to see it as. And this remake sadly didn't change that for me. Even with the upgrades and refinements, this is still very much Ocarina of Time, just polished up. My personal gripes with the game run much deeper into the game's core. That core wasn't touched at all for this remake, and that was entirely on purpose. Nintendo worked with Grezzo on this remake and put some genuine fans of the original in charge of this project. They were so thorough and careful to not fuck this up that they actually went out of their way to include alternate solutions for puzzles and glitches from the original to make this as accurate of a remake as possible. Now, while I can definitely appreciate the level of accuracy here, that degree of faithfulness is exactly why, even with this remake and all of its enhancements, I still can't get into it. But you know what? That's completely fine. This remake just wasn't made for me. This was very obviously meant to be a love letter to fans of the original, and I think that's pretty cool. There's nothing wrong with the game just not being for you, and Ocarina of Time, 3D or not, just isn't for me. However, I know I'm not alone in how I feel about this game, and it would have been nice to have a remake that did a bit more to modernize it. You know, flesh out the world a bit more, adjust the pacing, stuff like that. Now Majora's Mask, on the other hand, oh, now that's some good shit. Majora's Mask is my second favorite Zelda of all time, just under Wind Waker. So yeah, I got a real connection with this one. There really isn't anything else quite like it, and I don't think there ever will be. It was the result of a grueling development cycle of just 1 year. Any other game would have crumbled under such a tight deadline, but Majora's Mask arguably was able to thrive because of it. Under that kind of pressure, the development team was forced to throw together this extremely experimental experience without giving it much thought. An experience that Nintendo would have never put out otherwise under normal circumstances. Assets were reused, the game was padded to hell with optional side quests, and it was given this almost existential and foreboding atmosphere. An atmosphere that I can only imagine mirrored what the developers were feeling with such a short deadline looming over them. The result was what some consider to be one of the best and most unique Zelda games of all time. However, while some fans may look back on the game fondly, the development staff, yeah, not so much. It was an extremely stressful time in their career, a time where they were forced to work tirelessly, day and night, cobbling together what they considered to be half-baked ideas and mechanics just to get the game finished in time. To them, Majora's Mask is nothing more than a rushed, unfinished, and overly difficult mess of a game. And they're not alone. While this game definitely has its fans, it also has an equal amount of people that find the game too cryptic, gimmicky, and the story sucked. I mean, you would know. Dude's been gaming all his life. Nintendo's and these fans' perception of the game is completely the opposite of mine. I, and so many others, saw this as one of the most unique adventure games of all time, but all they saw was a game they'd rather pretend didn't happen at all. So, for this remake, a completely different approach was taken. Instead of keeping it true to the original like Ocarina of Time 3D did, they decided to take this opportunity to alter the game in an effort to appeal to a wider audience. So what fans considered to be challenging and dynamic boss fights were changed to have obvious weak points to make them less cryptic. Zora swimming was a super satisfying ability in the original, but to a novice it could be seen as unwieldy, so it was changed as well. And saving, which was handled in a unique way by forcing you to revert time back to the first day, was changed to be more accommodating. A lot of these more unconventional aspects were altered to make them more, well, conventional, which resulted in this remake losing a lot of what made the original so appealing to people like me. But the fact is, this remake just wasn't made for people like me. It was made for people who struggled with the original, and I can definitely appreciate that. Majora's Mask is undeniably a black sheep in the Zelda series, and not everyone's going to be into that. So this remake attempts to make it a bit more approachable for them. Now, while I don't necessarily agree with the direction this remake took, I'll always have the original to enjoy. This remake doesn't replace it. It just gives even more people an opportunity to enjoy this unique and beautiful game. So, while neither of these remakes were necessarily for me, that doesn't mean I think they're bad remakes. They both serve unique purposes, and I feel, for the most part, they serve those purposes well. It's all about your relationship with the originals, and whether you feel their flaws are worth embracing or not. In fact, that's true for most of the games I've looked at here. If you're a fan of these games, then some of their remakes may come across as disappointing to you due to how much they stray from the original formula. That doesn't necessarily make them bad remakes though. They just serve a different purpose, and that purpose is making them more accessible to newcomers. I mean, I'm a newcomer. Like I said before, I didn't grow up with an N64, so I see a lot of these games as dated and needing an overhaul. But thanks to these remakes, I've been able to find a new appreciation for games of this era. So maybe now if I go back, I'll finally be able to—
Nope.